So, once again, my tool addiction is in full swing. This one had to come home with me. I finally picked up a cut-off saw, and just to be sure, I got an extra abrasive disc for it. So, combined, the saw and the blade cost me, I believe, $340. The saw was, I think, about $320, and I paid 20 something for the disc. I would just tear right through this, but I've had some bad experiences where I needed to use my warranty. This would probably be easy on the ground. Oh. There we go. My first impressions of this are that this was packaged very well, and it seems to be in almost pristine condition, just a little bit of dust. I'll turn this around so you guys can see better. Couple little pieces of cardboard on it, keep it from getting scratched. Realistically, it'll probably get scratched after the first time I use it, so I don't know. Got a nice little chain here for locking it up when you want to transport it, so it comes up, and have some sort of wrench, probably for the blade that comes with it. Fine. The fit and finish on this is very nice, and the table seems very sturdy. That's an issue I've had with previous saws. Same with the thread on the vise. Everything is just, it looks like it's built well. Here we have the quick adjust on the vise, so you can quickly move it. The enclosure and blade guard seem to be built very well, but I guess that's something we'll have to see. One thing I can tell I don't like already is the way that the blade guard comes up, because when you come down, it rubs on the powder coat on the table. See what I'm talking about? Already, before I've even used it, there's all this blue paint accumulating from this part. Come on, Makita, I thought you guys were meant to test all these products. Some sort of bearing on here, or a different system of this opening. Maybe a spring would be nice. Here we have the motor. Nice fit and finish, and what appears to be an aluminium chassis. Good fit and finish on that. And the spring here, I prefer this kind of spring over one that goes in this direction. I believe this kind is called a coil spring. I could be wrong though. Towards the back of the saw, we have this thing to collect the dust, and then we have a spark guard right behind it, which kind of confuses me, but if it works, that's good. And it's not that uncommon these days to see a saw that has miter markings on it, so that's always good. One nice touch is they've added these rubber non-slip grips onto the bottom so the saw doesn't slide around, or it doesn't cut into your workbench. I think that's a nice touch, but I hope they're glued on, because often these kind of things will fall off. I believe this here is the mechanism used to lock the disc when you want to change the blade. I'll see how that works. One thing I'm very glad about is there's no ridiculous system to stop you from lowering the saw or pressing the trigger. It's just this little thumb switch. You can also move the head of the vise up in case you need to cut a wider piece of steel than this allows in its current position. I'll have to come back tomorrow to show you it cutting a bit of steel, but let's turn it on. Moment of truth. One thing I noticed as I powered up the saw is there is a little bit of play in the arbor here. I don't know if you can hear that because of all the birds, but these tend to not be precision tools anyway. It should be alright. Alright, it's the next day. By the way, I've cranked the exposure just so you can see the saw because it's in the shade. It's time to test cutting a bit of metal. For the test, I've got this very thick little bit of steel. I forget the exact thickness. I believe it's about 6 mil or something like that. It's usually more accurate to cut the steel flat rather than up, because if there's any tilt in the saw, it'll show more if you're cutting it vertical. But it's far easier on the saw if you cut it vertical, so that's what I'm going to do. Alright, let's crank this down. Alright, time for the test. So the saw didn't slow down in the slightest. I felt no bogging down. I was a little hesitant to push down on it. It could have cut a lot faster, but it's a brand new tool. I don't really want to ruin it. And you can see that beautiful nice cut. That's what a fresh blade does. If I really cared, I'd check if that's square, but let's see if you can see this. It was not perfectly on the table because this isn't a new piece of steel. So I typically cut this thickness of steel with my plasma cutter, but often these saws tend to be a lot faster. And you can see this piece is not as hot as if I would to plasma cut it, and the burr isn't as big. These saws are also way faster to set up because you don't need compressed air. One reason why we don't always use these saws though is because the piece tends to be very hot after you cut it. That's the advantage of a dry or cold cut saw. So my first impressions of this saw are that it's very sturdy. There are a couple improvements that Makita could make, but for the price of a little over $300, I'd say this is very worth it. Thanks for watching. See you next time.